I want to talk about something that sneaks into almost every henna business at some point, especially if you've been doing this work for a while. You start speaking a language that makes complete sense to you, but quietly creates distance between you and the people you actually want to book. This is one of those mistakes that doesn't look like a mistake on the surface. In fact, it often feels like growth. You've learned more, you are more confident in your craft, you finally understand the technical side of what you do, and so naturally that language starts showing up in your captions, your stories, your service descriptions, and suddenly your marketing sounds very professional. But here's the hard truth, and I say this with so much love. Professional doesn't always mean approachable, and approachable is what clients need first. This is marketing mistake number 26, using jargon your clients don't actually understand. So let's slow this down a bit, because jargon isn't just big words. Jargon is any language that assumes someone else already knows what you know. Words like mehndi, words like stain release, cone control, oxidation, terpene profile. To you, these are very normal everyday terms. To a client, they can feel like a pop quiz that they didn't study for. And here's what most henna artists don't realize. When a client doesn't understand something fully, they usually don't ask. They just retreat. They nod silently and they keep scrolling. And they decide not to DM. Not because they aren't interested, but because they don't want to feel awkward, behind, or not cultured enough, right? Confusion doesn't create curiosity. It actually creates distance, and distance kills bookings. I want you to imagine this for a second. You walk into a space where everyone is using insider language. No one pauses to explain, no one checks in. You wouldn't feel excited about that. You'd feel like you don't belong. That's what jargon does when it goes untranslated. And here's the part that matters most. This has nothing to do with your intelligence. Nothing. Clarity is not a lack of expertise. Clarity is an evidence of mastery. Okay? The henna artists who can explain complex things simply are not less skilled. They're more generous. They understand that education is only powerful when it's received. Think of your role less like an expert speaking at people and more like a guide walking with them. A guide doesn't show off how much they know. A guide makes sure that no one gets lost, right? So let's talk about what this looks like in practice. Instead of saying, this cone or this paste had excellent stain release, excellent dye release, right? You might say, this formula develops deeper color and continues to darken over the first and second days. Instead of saying, I only use natural mehndi cones, you might say, I use plant-based henna that stains safely and fades naturally over time. It's the same expertise, but it's a different experience. One version feels insider only. The other feels reassuring, and reassurance is what clients are actually paying for. This mistake shows up most often with artists who are trying to be taken seriously. You want to sound legitimate. You want to sound like you know what you're doing. And I get that, but here's the paradox. When you sound overly technical, you don't come across as more trustworthy. You just come across as harder to approach. And people don't book artists who they feel intimidated by. They book artists who make them feel safe to ask questions, safe to admit that they don't know things, safe to trust your guidance. That's especially important if you're still newer or if you're rebuilding confidence after burnout. You don't need to prove that you belong. You already do. Your job is to translate your expertise into language that welcomes people in. Now, let's make this tangible because insight without action doesn't actually change anything, right? So here's the corrective step for this major marketing mistake. I want you to choose one educational post that you've already written in the past, just one, and then rewrite it as if you were explaining the concept to a friend who has never had henna before, someone who's curious but unfamiliar. No shortcuts, no assumed knowledge, no, they'll probably get it. No, none of that. Explain it slowly, simply, warmly. Then save both versions. Post the clearer one and pay attention. Notice how people respond. Notice if you get more questions, more saves, more DMs. Most artists are genuinely surprised by how much better the simpler version performs. Not because it's watered down, but because it feels considerate. This is something we work through deeply inside of Hennapreneurs programs. Not just learning what to say, but learning how to say it in a way that makes clients feel included instead of excluded. You don't need to impress your peers with your vocabulary. Your peers aren't the ones paying you. Your future clients are. And future clients are looking for clarity, warmth, and confidence, not complexity. If your marketing ever feels like people are watching but not responding, this is one of the first places to look, friend. Because when people understand you, they trust you. And when they trust you, they book. If this resonates, I'm inviting you now to download the Hennapreneur app, okay? It's where we take these concepts out of theory and place them into real-world application inside of my programs so you can market and not just sound good, but do what actually works, okay? You don't need to sound smarter. You need to sound human, and you already know how to do that.